Okay, we are live. This is Addy Ads, Atticus Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. It is Tuesday or Monday? It's Monday, the 9th of
Monday.
November. Crazy start to the week already with this election stuff, but we are talking sexuality, relationships, Rollo Tomasi, sex, exotic dancing, etc. We've done 2 chats already with Miss Oak Leaves and Onions. And give me a 5x5 on the audio, people, if we're good. I will put the entropy chat in the live chat if anybody wants to do a super chat. That would be really helpful and super appreciated. If not, that's cool too. It's also a great spot to do uncensored chat and discuss things that monitored over on the YouTube. So let me turn that off so I don't get feedback. But I want to thank Miss Oak Leaves and Onions for joining us this evening. Thanks again for agreeing to chat with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's been about a month or so since we've talked. But let's just get it out of the way so we can get to, I guess, the stuff that we usually focus on. What can I just ask about the election and how that's been this week for you? If you want to do plead the fifth, that's cool too. But I'm doing my due diligence, bringing up the election week.
Well, I mean, it's been interesting to watch. Definitely hasn't been boring lately. Um, I am going to kind of plead the fifth in the sense that I've always really admired people who know when not to say things. People who know when not to talk about things that they aren't particularly well educated on. And so while it's been interesting, I'm kind of just sitting and waiting to see what happens next. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know for certain what's going to happen next. I don't think anyone does, and so I'm just sitting and watching. And I think that's it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good response. I'd say. I mean, if you don't, find yourself well read enough on a certain topic or what with
Yeah.
the right amount of expertise, that's a good way to put it. To plead the fifth, I think that's something I wish a lot more people would do is know when they shouldn't talk on things they don't understand. But
Yeah.
you have been posting a bit more about an author, Rollo Tomasi, who's an author we've discussed before. His second book, as I understand, and that's preventive medicine. Is that correct?
Yes. I've been doing a chapter by chapter review, and I just got through roughly the first half of the book, and it's been a timeline of women's development. So it's been really, really fun for me because it's like every time as I'm reading it, it's either stuff that I've seen other women going through, or stuff that I've gone through, or stuff that I'm eventually at some point going to go through. So it's like this timeline of my sexual life, or at least most women's sexual life. There are things, and he repeats this several times, that will cause you to deviate from that pattern, but it's a basic pattern that most women are following. And it's a very depressing pattern. Like, I think in the last video I was saying, like, this is basically a tutorial on what you should not do if you want to have happy, fulfilling relationships as a woman. So it's been fun. It's been really fun. I actually have it on the table right next to me, so I keep on looking over at it. But yeah, like, we've gotten, let's see, yeah, about this far through. And
Yeah, I was muted there for a second. Cover so people know what we're talking about.
but yeah, like,
Oh, did you
it
catch that?
goes. What?
Oh, could we see the cover? Is that cool?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Yeah, I was mute
this
there
one.
for a second. So there it is, Rational Male, Preventive Medicine, and I'll probably readjust the title to include a more accurate title because sometimes that annoys people. But I just titled it "Stripper Talk with a Former Stripper." But our kind of point of reference is Rollo Tomasi and intersexual dynamics and talking about the red pill, as it were. And Miss Oakleaves and myself have actually discussed doing a regular show. It seems our schedules are aligned a little bit better this month than last. I think we last spoke, like I said, about a month ago. But going back to what you were saying about preventive medicine, he kind of maps out, like you said, a timeline of the average woman's, I guess, sexual cycles, maybe, or how would you
Yeah.
say, sexual phases at the micro and macro level?
Phases is the word he used, and I think phases is a good word, but the idea is more just which direction she's being pulled in, because she's going to be, women are constantly drawn to two different and kind of very, I would say, almost opposing elements. We're drawn to the arousing and sexually exciting alpha, and we're also drawn to the secure, safe, and providing beta. And a lot of people have this very negative idea of beta, but women want that too. So we're constantly kind of ping ponging between these two things. And at different points in our lives, we're going to want one side of this equation more than the other. And so, depending on where we are developmentally, we're either going toward the alpha or going toward the beta. And that doesn't necessarily mean we're going toward different men. It's, in my case at least, because I married at a relatively young age. I met my husband at 23, and that was kind of the end of my dating life, or at least my exploratory dating life. We're still technically dating, as a lot of people will say if they're married. They're like, "Oh, we're still dating." But ever since that point, it's been the same man, and so the things that I've been attracted to are either alpha or beta qualities in the same man, and I've been kind of ping ponging between those, which qualities I'm noticing, which qualities I'm appreciating more. But for women, these phases, it's at what point in their life are they chasing after alphas, or what point of their life are they chasing after betas?
Yeah, right. And then there's the famous wall, right? The wall that is hit around, I think it's 29 or 30.
30 is kind of the wall, and 29 is the epiphany phase. 28, 29, when they realize that the wall is coming. And so
The
technically I
epiphany
have
phase, right?
post
That's what it's called.
wall. But yeah, I hit the epiphany phase. And a lot of people have, especially when I first started talking about Rollo Tomasi's books, a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, you just hit your epiphany phase early." And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I was 23. But yeah, I hit my epiphany phase probably at about the standard time, but I was already in a committed relationship. So it was like, it was just this moment of kind of dawning realization for me that, okay, all these things that didn't quite make sense to me before, all these things that weren't particularly important to me before, now I get it. And so it was kind of funny, because my epiphany phase was a lot smoother and less rocky than a lot of other women's epiphany phases have been. And that's kind of what it's been like reading this book. It's like I'll notice things that I went through that were just very smooth and not particularly stressful for me, that other women, it's like this huge stumbling block, like, "Oh my god, I've got to do this," or "Oh my god, I've got to do that." And I didn't have that problem. It was already taken care of. And so that was very nice for me.
And what do you attribute to that? The fact that you maybe found it, as you put it, smoother or less anxiety ridden, perhaps?
I think one of the big deals, one of the big things that changed it for me was the fact that I put so much emphasis on, oh dear, finding a life partner when I was in my very early 20s. I wasn't interested in just chasing after exciting guys, which, I mean, when you're in your early 20s as a woman, you're after alphas, because you have this idea that the party years are just going to go on forever. And I certainly had that presupposition. Like, I really thought the party years were just going to go on forever. I kind of knew that eventually I was going to have to retire as a dancer, because, 28ish, I was going to be looking for a different job, just to kind of transition into it. But I didn't realize that I was going to lose a lot of dating potential at the age of 28. Um, I was looking for companionship. And so I would date guys, and I would very quickly leave guys if I didn't think that there was some kind of companionship potential. When I met my husband, he was, are we still on? Sorry. Yep. Okay. Um, I didn't know if I lost you. The screen did something weird. I got confused. But yeah, when I met my husband, he was very he fit the alpha part of the hypergamous equation for me very well. He was very attractive, he was exciting, he was arousing. But we also had a really good relationship, a really good friendship we had built up. So we had that security angle too, which a lot of people put down the beta side. A lot of people talk poorly of the beta side. They look at it and say, like, okay, anybody who's a beta is clearly being fooled and used for resources and taken advantage of. And it's this very negative idea. But the beta side is not just it's not just the weak side and it's not just the lesser side. The beta side also contains things like provisioning and security and companionship. And I think in one of my videos I called it all the warm fuzzy feelings. And you need to have that too. You don't want to have just that, because if all you've got is warm fuzzy feelings, then you're not going to be sexually arousing to a woman. You're just basically a teddy bear at that point, and she'll cuddle you, but she doesn't want to have sex with you. If you have that alpha side of the equation, the arousal side, but you also have those warm kind of cuddly feelings, it's like then you've got what I call the everything man. You've got all the necessary factors for a hypergamous ideal. And that's what I meant with my husband when I was 23. And so I married him as quickly as he would allow me. And I just kind of clung to him as hard as I could. And
I
yeah.
I found this through Matt Ridley, who's a scientist author or a nonfiction science author, and he writes about evolutionary psychology. And I guess there's this species of birds where occasionally, not always, the female birds will get two males for each need, basically the provisioning for the chicks, right? But then whoever the sire is, that'll be like a different bird, which I found to be quite interesting because birds are, as you may know, the one of the few species of animals that are monogamous or pair off, in a monogamous way. I know like packs of wolves tend to do that too. There is like obviously some more, occasional lone wolfish behavior or coyote. Coyotes are a little more solitary, I guess, but
Coyotes, I think, do
just
packs too, actually.
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They're also pack oriented, but less so than wolves, I think. But yeah, so it just shows that animalistic primal nature coming out of the female need for that good genetic material as well as provisioning and security, right? Like a shelter but more generally speaking, like food of some sort, right?
Yeah. The
Resources.
argument, the argument I always had, and this was just a personal thing for me, in our society, food isn't so much an issue, shelter isn't so much an issue. We've got lots and lots of programs to take care of single mothers. The concern that I had is, as good as it is to get the good genes from the hot alpha guy, you kind of need him to stick around to raise the children to manifest those alpha traits. Even if they have the genes, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to grow up having those very idealized traits like courage and honesty, integrity, all these wonderful things that we value so much. You find a man who's attractive and he has these traits, that doesn't necessarily mean his kids are going to have it, because genetics alone is not going to pass that down. It might, sometimes it does, but generally that's a learned behavior. That's something that you have to train into somebody, and who better to do it than the alpha who possesses it to begin with. So having both sides of those equations, it was a big priority for me. I didn't necessarily just want somebody who would be exciting and arousing and give me the wonderful genetics without sticking around to do the training and the teaching that goes with those genetics. And I was
Right.
very lucky in the sense that I got what I was looking for.
So you're alluding to fatherhood, right?
Yeah,
In a way, yeah.
well, I can't remember. I can't remember who said it, but they were like, humans are all about the information that we kind of upload or download after we're born. Like, yes, genetics definitely plays a role, and we don't know how extensive the role genetics plays is, but we take in just massive amounts of information as we're growing up, and that information affects us in all sorts of different ways. And so there is you want to have that alpha seed. You definitely want to have the good genetics because they make excellent building blocks and they're going to contribute in all sorts of very valuable ways. But you also need that personality,
Yeah.
and that spirit, which is what I was after in the first place. That was what I was attracted to. It's like, well, how much of that is genetic, but how much of that is trained? And so, I figured I'd hedge my bets and get both.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite psychological. That's the thing too, is like when you look at like cats, like big cats, there's this lion whisperer guy on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen him, but he talks about the dominance among the female lions, because they're um, you know,
They've got a
their,
hierarchy.
their yeah, their packs are matriarchal, right? So like the females will hunt, and they'll just have basically like one alpha for siring and then maybe like one or two lower ranked alphas. But uh, among the females, there's a hunting hierarchy, right? So in that particular pack, and the point was he was trying to make was the most dominant was actually the I think she was the smallest one, or the second smallest. But the biggest one was actually the least dominant, as well.
Huh.
So she wasn't the smallest, but she wasn't the biggest either, I don't think. But so yeah, just another interesting aspect of even a animal as physically dominant and a species whose physicality is so important to its survival, such as lions. The sheer size of one of the lions doesn't determine its dominance among, or hierarchy, right, rank among the pack, which I think is very interesting.
It makes sense though. It's who's a good leader, and that's who becomes a leader. In any kind of social group, you're going to end up with that. I'm trying to think back to what I know about wolves because I've seen some things on wolves, and it's kind of I think it's kind of the same thing where it's like whoever can lead best is the leader. It's not necessarily just who can be the biggest and bully all the others into submission. If you listen to Jordan Peterson at all, I think he's talked
Yeah,
about that in one of his lectures. He was talking about how, you can be big and you can be dominant and you can bully everybody else into submission. But the moment you turn your back, if you're a bad leader, two of the other slightly less dominant males will just rip you to shreds.
yeah,
And, that happens with like gorillas or chimpanzees, but it also kind of happens with humans. If you're not a good leader, other people will take charge.
right. Yeah, and it translates, psychologically, not just physically, is what I think what you're saying. Like even
Yeah.
like politically, we look at how politicians behave in coalitions and such.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
it's
all
quite
just a giant
similar.
troop of monkeys.
Maybe, yeah, maybe one
Sometimes.
step ahead,
I think a,
barely.
I think a congress is actually what they call a group of baboons. I'm not sure if that's actually it's some
Yeah.
sort of primate, but they call it a congress. And
Oh wow.
numerous people have taken note of that and seen it as rather amusingly true.
I did not know that. I think I might have heard that once before, but yeah, it's like which one came first?
Good question.
So Rolo, you
I'm sorry you muted out for a second. I didn't hear you. Yeah, I'm not hearing you. Sorry.
mic check, mic check. Can you
Oh,
guys hear
now I
me?
can hear you.
Okay, excellent.
I don't
I'm
know if that
going
was
to ask you a question, and then I'm
mm,
going to fix something here so that doesn't happen again.
okay.
Lowell Tomasi, preventative medicine. You are midway, or you're partway through his book. What was the biggest surprise that you found as you're reading, if at all? I know for me, just learning about the phases as that pertains to age was really a consciousness shifter when looking at how different aged women behave towards me. So that was probably it for me, but I don't know if you had one of those, or if it was different or the same.
There weren't. I mean, there kind of weren't surprises in the ages I've already been through. So, The party years, I understood those. The 30s and the shift over to, you know, provisioning interests, that I kind of understood as well. I've been through that. I was already married at the time, but I've been through it. The thing that really shocked me, I guess, and it didn't surprise me, it seemed pretty, it made sense, but that didn't make it any less shocking, was the idea that women in their 70s and 80s will just kind of casually, like after at some point they'll just kind of casually tell the grandkids, yeah, your grandpa was, you know, he was never much of a man, and it kind of reveals and gives it gives away the fact that they married him as a beta plan B kind of guy, and they were just never satisfied with him. And that seemed horrific to me, because women would spend, you know, 50 years in a marriage to somebody they weren't attracted to, and it just seemed like such a horrible waste of, I would say, almost a lifetime, like a sexual lifetime. If you enter into a marriage when you're in your, let's say, when you hit 30 and you spend the next 50 years in that, like that's your sexual lifetime. And, you know, barring a few like misadventures in your party years, that's it. What a horrible waste that is. And I'm I mean, I read it, and I know women do this. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't it I mean, it surprises me, but it doesn't, there was no part of me that was like, "Oh no, that can't be true." It was very true. It was just horrifying. I can't imagine myself, at least, choosing to be in a relationship with someone for an extended period of time that I didn't have a genuine sense of attraction and respect, and I don't know, just all these things that build up a healthy relationship. You know, you have to have some attraction for the other person if you're going to be if you're going to be sleeping in bed with them every night for the rest of their, you know, your lives together. You're gonna have some level of attraction. You're gonna have some respect for the other person. You're gonna have to like the other person. And the idea that women would choose to marry someone that they didn't have those kinds of feelings for is just, I mean, it makes sense. I get it. It's horrible. It's just absolutely horrible. And so that was kind of the thing I spent a lot of the last video I made talking about, because it stunned me. Like just the idea of living a life like that, it seems so horribly wasteful. And it's terrible for the people in the relationship too. Like, you know, not just the woman and the man that she's married to, who unfortunately married her thinking that she actually loved him, most likely. You know, it's horrible for the kids. It's horrible for everybody that they touch. Like, everybody that they interact with is kind of negatively affected by this lie,